Trauma does not impact all communities equally. Marginalized communities, including those defined by race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and sexual orientation, often experience higher rates of trauma due to systemic inequities and historical injustices. This video explores how trauma disproportionately affects marginalized communities, discusses the role of systemic issues, and highlights potential solutions for promoting healing and equity. Understanding trauma in marginalized communities. Historical trauma refers to the collective emotional and psychological injury resulting from oppressive and traumatic experiences endured by a group over generations. Examples include the trauma experienced by indigenous communities due to colonization and the transgenerational trauma of African Americans due to slavery and systemic racism. These historical traumas have long-lasting effects on the mental health and well-being of individuals and communities. Socioeconomic status significantly impacts exposure to trauma. Marginalized communities often face higher rates of poverty, unemployment, and lack of access to healthcare and education. These factors increase vulnerability to trauma, including violence, substance abuse, and mental health issues. Economic instability can create chronic stress and limit access to resources necessary for recovery and resilience. Discrimination and social exclusion based on race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, or disability can lead to chronic stress and trauma. Experiences of racism, homophobia, transphobia, and ableism contribute to psychological distress and exacerbate trauma symptoms. The ongoing experience of discrimination can create a sense of alienation and increase the risk of mental health disorders. Impact of trauma on marginalized communities. Trauma disproportionately impacts the mental health of marginalized communities. Higher rates of depression, anxiety, PTSD, and substance abuse are observed among these populations. The lack of culturally competent mental health services further exacerbates these disparities. Access to mental health care that respects and understands cultural contexts is critical for effective treatment. The chronic stress associated with trauma can lead to various physical health issues, including cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and chronic pain. Marginalized communities often have limited access to quality health care, compounding these health disparities. Addressing the physical health consequences of trauma requires comprehensive care that integrates mental and physical health services. Marginalized communities face significant barriers to accessing mental health and trauma support services. These barriers include lack of financial resources, cultural stigmas, language barriers, and mistrust of healthcare systems due to historical injustices. Overcoming these barriers is essential for ensuring that all individuals have access to the support they need. Addressing systemic issues and promoting healing. Providing culturally competent care is essential for addressing trauma in marginalized communities. This involves training healthcare providers to understand and respect cultural differences, addressing language barriers, and incorporating culturally relevant practices into treatment. Culturally competent care enhances the effectiveness of interventions and promotes trust and engagement in the therapeutic process. Community-based interventions can effectively address trauma by leveraging local resources and fostering community resilience. Programs that engage community leaders, promote peer support, and provide accessible mental health services can help mitigate the impact of trauma. Community-based approaches recognize the strengths and capacities within communities and empower individuals to support one another. Advocacy and policy change are crucial for addressing the systemic issues that contribute to trauma in marginalized communities. Policies that promote social and economic justice, improve access to health care and education, and protect against discrimination can reduce trauma exposure and support healing. Advocacy efforts can also raise awareness of the needs and rights of marginalized communities and promote systemic change. Raising awareness about the impact of trauma on marginalized communities is essential for promoting understanding and empathy. Educational initiatives that highlight the historical and systemic roots of trauma can foster a more inclusive and supportive society. Public education campaigns, community workshops, and school-based programs can contribute to a greater understanding of trauma and its effects. Building trust in healthcare systems is vital for encouraging marginalized communities to seek support. This involves addressing past injustices, promoting transparency, and ensuring that healthcare providers are trained to provide respectful and equitable care. Trust-building efforts can include community engagement, patient-centered care, and collaboration with community organizations. Case studies illustrate the impact of trauma on marginalized communities and the effectiveness of culturally competent and community-based interventions. One case involves a community program that provided culturally tailored mental health services to a predominantly Indigenous population. The program's success highlights the importance of integrating traditional healing practices with conventional mental health care. Another case involves an advocacy initiative that successfully campaigned for policy changes to improve access to healthcare for low-income communities. Trauma disproportionately affects marginalized communities due to systemic inequities and historical injustices. Addressing these issues requires culturally competent care, community-based interventions, advocacy and policy change, education and awareness, and building trust in healthcare systems. By implementing these solutions, we can promote healing and equity for all communities. Recognizing and addressing the unique challenges faced by marginalized communities is essential for creating a just and inclusive society where everyone has the opportunity to heal and thrive.